friends? Welcome back to the shop. Today, a treat especial. I know I use that term a lot, but it is a treat especial because today we are doing this on location from Frank's Gun Shop in Gloversville, New York. I'd like to give a big shout out to those guys because they've been seeing some stuff that we've been doing on the channel. They really were enjoying it, and they said, hey, the inventory's open. Why don't you come on up here and take a look at what we got and see what you want to do a video on. And today we are taking a look at the Savage Stance. The Savage Stance. Savage Stance is a slim 9mm chambered single stack magazine pistol designed for concealed carry. It's got a lot of cool features. There's a lot of stuff that's packed into this little gun. We're gonna see some stuff that's really familiar and some stuff that kind of some ideas that have been lifted from other manufacturers. But I think this thing is pretty cool. I'm not exactly sold on it 100%, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this little gun, and we have got a new M&P Shield Plus that we're going to kind of use as a comparison. Not going to do maybe not a direct head-to-head, or maybe not head-to-head enough for some of our viewers, but for today it's a head-to-head with the M&P Shield Plus. Let's get this thing down on the bench and take a look at some of its features, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Okay, so down on the bench we have the Savage Stance. Now, tragedy has struck. I forgot the Q-tip that I normally use. Yeah, you might as well just unsubscribe right now. Anyway, so we have the Savage Stance here. We've got a single stack magazine, which suffers an interesting fate, similar to this two-part magazine system that's found on so many guns. From what I understand, that this two-part magazine system is here to take up the slack when you add a new base plate that gives you that increases your magazine capacity. So this way you can complete the grip. What I don't understand is why, as a factory magazine, why exactly the factory is worried so much about what's going to happen to an aftermarket in the aftermarket. I mean, shouldn't we just let the aftermarket pick up the slack? If you want an extended magazine, instead of just putting another base on it, maybe we just offer maybe we offer longer mags, or have the aftermarket do that for you. This sort of two-part magazine system feels very strange to me. Now, what I will say is that this particular one is very firm. The fit is excellent. This is the only example that we have in the shop, so I'm not really too sure, and I don't want to spend all day on this, but I don't have anything else to compare this to. However, this one is very nicely fit. 8+1 capacity here, 8 rounds in the chamber, 8 rounds, I'm sorry, in the magazine. And what we've got here, we can see just right off the hop, what's cool is we've got a very familiar takedown system. We've got this is our slide release here, and then we've got some incredible stippling on here. Now, for me, this is sort of like this is a bit of a double-edged sword, right? So when we produce this firearm and we go ahead and draw it from concealment, and we're going to place our shot, and when we're training with this is a massive, to me, this is a great aid. So now every single time, sorry, you guys are kind of falling down. This thing is falling down a little bit, but whenever we go and actually train with this thing, this kind of stippling is just going to hold onto our hands. I mean, it is very, very sticky. Moving up to the sights, we've got a 3-dot setup with an orange dot up front. I think that looks pretty cool. It presents pretty well. And then we've got a radiused over rear sight here that you can see. This is pretty cool. Drawn from concealment. I don't think that the sights are offering, the largest thing that's going to get snagged on back here is probably not the sights. But anyway, this is definitely limiting our snag factor. And with this you can see that it's actually undercut. And let me bring this down in so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. So when we look at the front of this, and I'm looking at this face here, this is not at 90. This is actually undercut, which is kind of cool because when you do put a pocket seam in front of this thing, if you do decide to if you need to charge this off of a piece of clothing, what you're going to be able to do is that little pocket seam is, or this little undercut back here is going to grab hold of that. Clothing or fabric or that kind of material, and you're going to be able to get some of it underneath there, so you actually probably can rack this thing. And I was able to just kind of goofing around with it. I was able to charge it, at least reset the striker, with that. Trigger pull weight. I can do a test here. We'll take this over to the vise and I can do a test here in a second. But we got a polymer frame, polymer frame striker fire gun here. We should be within it certainly feels reasonable. It's nice and crisp. There's no red flags there. We've got some cool slide cuts. Slide lightning cuts up here, and then along with that, we've got some jimping out front for forward cocking installations, and those things work just fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. What is cool? So now I want to talk about some borrowed tech here, right? Obviously, we have eyes. We can see what's going on, and by the title of the video, we know that this is going to be sort of at some point, a Shield Plus is going to come into the picture, and we're going to start taking a look at that. That's all fine. We can. The Smith & Wesson sold a few million shields. There's nothing wrong with that. Some borrowed tech. What I think is kind of interesting here, and we have seen this before a little bit, is a polymer trigger stop. I think that's kind of cool. Would I like it to have some adjustment to it? Yeah, that's fine. But at least it keeps this thing from just kind of flying off of the really over travel. It does keep it from doing that. Now, I hazard to use the word, but there were a couple of times, and I'm doing it here, but there were a couple of times when I had this magazine in and this didn't lock back. It might just be because this puppy is absolutely 100% brand new out of the box. Yeah, I don't know. And this, if you're going to give me like some kind of gasketing system or some kind of two-part magazine, I realize that the gun is empty, that there's nothing in it, but I'd like to see a little bit of a better fitment here. But let's pull this. Let's take the slide off of this thing. Pull this out. Turn this down. Drop our slide, pull the trigger, and that thing comes off the front. Now, what we're going to see here is something that's super cool. We have a serialized fire control system. This is probably the most interesting thing that is going on inside of this. We've got Savage that hasn't made a handgun in a very long time, and here they are. The first thing that they're going to make out of the gate is a serialized fire control group. That to me is very interesting. That's a big indicator that obviously they're giving us a flag. They're saying, hey guys, you're going to want to pay attention because we've got a lot of cool stuff. I'm just readjusting you here, but that we've got a lot of really cool stuff coming down the road. And we want to make sure that this is going to make a splash and that that we mean business. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. So far, there's nothing really mysterious that's happening here. We've got some pressed pieces and some slide guides that are there. The polymer that's here seems to be in really nice shape. The mold. Obviously, the mold for this is going to be very young. I'm not entirely sure as to if there is any other. I'm sure that there is some other kind of reinforcement here besides this, but I don't know exactly much more than I don't know much more than that. All I do know is that there's got to be some other reinforcement here. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of interesting things. Something to note is that this trigger is not polymer. This is aluminum. I think that's actually kind of cool. And when we flip the slide up, we can see here what I think is super cool is that we've got a two-stage main recoil rod and recoil spring. This is pretty neat. what I think is really cool about this is that this thing is very, very nicely. This particular part is very nicely made, and I don't think that that's an accident. I think that they absolutely meant to make this part just kind of gleam here, because I do think that this is very nicely made, and it is stiff. That is very robust. So when we look at this, this is kind of an indicator. To me, this is an indicator of quality, because we did not need to really go off the deep end on this, but we've got some really nice machining. We've got some really nice finish work, nice looking springs, and some really heavy stuff in here without a crazy heavy racking. So this is what we're racking off of, and this is what the gun is bouncing off of. And this thing, it does really feel very good. Now we got a very nice finish on this barrel, and it's pretty robust, as we can see. But we are, we're 9mm rated here. So it's a pretty cool, just sort of like, initial impression, just getting this thing apart and just putting it on the bench, just off the hop. It seems like they really do mean business here. And I'm happy to see that. That's definitely the change I want to see. That's definitely the change I want to see, because I think this, I think this company, seeing Savage come back on the market with something that, is taking such a stance. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but it's taking such a stance. Is very cool. So if we sort of take out, so we have a brand new, this is a new in the box M&P Shield Plus. All I did shoot some B-roll of this before we started, so this thing was a little greasier than it is, but I essentially just wrapped it right back up the way I found it. And you can see that we're sort of, that this has definitely taken some of these, obviously, Savage is borrowing a lot of ideas here. Now we've got some nicer sights on the Shield Plus, but we've still got a 3-dot setup with an orange dot out front. I think that's pretty cool. What I can say is that obviously the Shield Plus is going to come is optic ready, and we end up with a flat face trigger. And again, I'll do a trigger side by side. I'll put a trigger side by side test at the end of this video so that we can actually compare the trigger. What I will say is that on my initial impression, the trigger on the Shield Plus is, this flat face is excellent. It's much nicer. I'd really like to pick one of these up and absolutely work it in, because I think this would really be phenomenal. So one thing I just want to go back to real quick is, before I take the slide off of this, when we look at the stippling here, so this is more of this is going to come down to individual shooter choice. This is a personal choice for you guys, but this kind of stippling and this kind of stippling, to me, these two, this is much grippier. However, this is just me. This is just everybody. The one thing that we fail to mention, that we fail to remember a lot of times, just when we're looking at guns, is that every single person has a different level of what's acceptable. And when we throw money into that equation, stuff starts to get wacky. To me, this kind of stippling is fantastic for training. This is great for taking in the range. It's bad for concealment, because this thing is always, you're going to be constantly, depending on how you carry, if you're carrying inside the waistband, this might actually irritate you. This might irritate your skin. And if you're carrying outside the waistband, I feel like this is always tugging on my clothes. I'm constantly correcting my outfit to make sure that I'm not printing, or make sure that I'm not telegraphing that I'm carrying a gun. So we've got some stippling like that on the M&P. It's really it's really contained in just the grip portion. But again, like I said, this is going to come down to individual shooter choice, and it doesn't mean that anybody's wrong. It doesn't mean that somebody's right, somebody else is wrong here. It's just what's going on now. Holy hell, that is stiff. Okay, that's just easy. So if we take this off. Once we take this shield down, what we can see, now that always tips up, and you got to be careful of that because when you do take the slide off your M&P, off of your shield, make sure you put that back down. I think they painted that orange on that for a reason, but that front trunnion is really tight in there. Anyway, so what we've got a similar, like I said, we can see a lot of borrowed tech here. So we've got a two-stage recoil guide rod, recoil spring. Obviously, this one back here, like I said before, this is the one that's taking the recoil hit, and this is the one that's operating the gun. But two very similar. I mean, as far as the profile is concerned on these two slides, the slides are just about the same. Are just about the same size. I failed to bring a scale, but I'm telling you right now that they're very similar in weight. At least by feel, these are very similar in weight. So we've got really two, and this is just a simple overview. Again, we're seeing some other similarities here, right? We've got a chamfer, a big chamfer on top for witness hole on both of these. I'm sure that this is going to come optics ready at some point, but we've got two pretty similar items. Now, what's not similar about these is that obviously we've got a single stack and we have the Shield Plus. The Shield Plus is a staggered magazine that holds 10. We've got a 10. It's a 10 and a 12 or a 10 and a 13. I forget what the other one is. But we've got two mags. People berate me in the comments just for not knowing the magazines. But there's two mags here, and this is a staggered mag. So we can call this not a real comparison because we've got single stack and we've got a staggered stack, but I think they actually are. These are both brand new guns that are on the market now. They're very similar. They're similarly sized, but when we start to really dig into this, when we start to look at it, and YouTube is getting kind of weird about YouTubers putting pricing out there online, but when we start to look at what's going on with these as far as price goes, we can see that there's actually really quite a difference there in where these are priced. And like I said before, everybody has a different definition of what's acceptable, and some people are going to dig it and some people aren't, and that's okay. Okay, so we got these we got the slides put back on, and what we can see here is that there's a lot of similarities in size. Obviously, Savage picked up a Shield, and they were like, okay, this seems to be a proven system. Let's bring it over. So we'll do a layover here. So the Savage, if we've got this on top, and we sort of set this down, and we make it so that the slides line up even, right? We can see that the Savage is just a wee bit taller. We do have it seems to have a longer sight radius here on the M&P. They've really brought the sights all the way to the back. They really wanted to give you as much as possible. And then when we sort of line them up like this, you can see that there's a difference. There's a difference there in size. They're going to be very similarly sized. I mean, if you like the way the Shield carries, you're probably going to dig the way the way this stance carries.
Okay, so that is kind of this is a real quick overview of the Savage stance, what we got going on in this little guy. Look, it seems like, I know that it may feel like at some point, at some parts in that video that I'm not up to bat for Savage here. Look, I think it's really cool. We got a company that hasn't released a handgun in a really long time, and they were releasing this thing with some very cool features. They got these features from a proven system. We're definitely going to stand on the shoulders of our friends here, and we're taking we're ripping pages out of Smith & Wesson's playbook in order to make this thing. But if that's what you guys got to do to get back in the pistol market, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to see exactly where they end up taking this, where they take the serialized fire control, or I'm sorry, this fire control group, removable fire control group here. I'm excited to see where they take that and how far they take it. I do think that we have I think we've got some quality materials here, quality components, and we've definitely got, we're definitely coming in very aggressive at price point. Whether or not it's going to compete with your Smith & Wesson Shield, those of you that are Shield Plus people, or those of you that are diehard Smith & Wesson, whether or not it's going to compete with you is really up to you. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. Again, I want to thank Frank's Gun Shop for having us out here today. It's been awesome. Every single like, every single subscribe helps a massive amount, and 2A needs every single one of them. Thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. If you liked the video, like the video. I'll catch you in the next one.